Welcome back to the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. I am really inspired by the young adults that we have around us in the world today, all that they can do and all that they deliver to the world. And my hope is that this podcast contributes to their success now and in the future. When I received a note from my guest today who said her focus is on that age group too, I was immediately interested in speaking with her. Hillary Spiritos is the founder of the Bat Outta Hell company, and she coaches young adults, helping them to find courage and to design a life of purpose. And I really enjoyed this conversation, exploring her own experiences and what she does to help her clients to really focus in on orientating themselves around a life that is authentic and aligned to their values. And I hope that you enjoy the conversation. And as you do, if you'd be willing to share it with friends, family that could benefit from it too. Enjoy. And a special welcome to the After Dinner Leadership Podcast to Hillary Spiritos. Welcome, Hillary. Lovely to have you with us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I said in the intro, you are the founder of Bat Outta Hell.
Yes.
And immediately I've got to find out what is Bat Outta Hell? Why have you called your business Bat Outta Hell?
Bat Outta Hell is a pathfinding consultancy. It's a personal development coaching business. And my mission is to help young adults find and overcome their blocks, figure out what's next and by looking inward rather than outward for the answers, figure out what they're passionate about, what they're capable of, build and develop the skills and tools needed to execute the steps to move forward in their lives, and then develop a strategic, actionable plan so that they can bring their fullest, fiercest, most authentic selves to their lives moving forward. And the reason why I called my business Bat Outta Hell is because I've always really loved bats, actually. Bats are highly perceptive, adaptable, social creatures that actually spend a lot of their time upside down. So I think that they're seeing the world from a very different perspective. And in a lot of cultures, they symbolize transformation, rebirth, the coming out of the old and into the new, the coming out of the darkness and into the light, all of which I really resonate with.
Yeah.
And then I also am just someone who's a little bit left of center. I didn't want to be cookie cutter. This is how it's always been done. I'm not that kind of person. So I wanted a name that had a little bit of edge to it. That wasn't something that
you used the word for people to find their fiercest goals,
yes,
or something along those lines. Like, again, that word kind of stuck out to me, but it feels like the title itself of the company is a cage rattler.
Yes.
So, like, this is unconventional. I'm not going to approach this just in an orthodox way. That's how it comes across.
Yes, thank you. That's wonderful to hear, because I'm someone, that's the type of person I am. But I also think that that's the way I think we all are. And that's the way I think it's a great idea to try to approach life in that way. And I really just don't believe in the idea of this is how it's always been done and this is how we need to proceed. And it's clearly that's not working. So we need to kind of figure something out that's different. And you gotta go for it.
Great. Yeah. Well, I love that. And just the word fierce stood out for me. What is it about that choice of word for you?
I've always loved that word. And I think that it is just unapologetic and it is going for it. And I want to be clear, like, this isn't, and my clients, it's not all about living your fiercest, boldest, unapologetic life in such a big way that doesn't seem right to you. It is not about you have to move to a different country. You have to do something big and something bold in maybe that way. It's just making no apologies for being who you are. So if your decision is and what you want is to live in the home you grew up in with your friends from home, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's exactly what you should be doing. And that, I think, is a bold way to live life, because there's so much noise. So regardless of what it is, whether it's quote unquote, this is bad, like a smaller way to live your life or a bigger, more expansive way to live your life. That's not a great distinction, but it's all bold. It's all fierce because you're doing it about who you are, what you want, and what you want your life to look like, what you value.
Yes. Yeah. So based off the values, I'm sure we'll jump into that in a little bit more detail. Now, Hillary, one of the things that I love to ask each of my guests is what 3 leadership lessons do they wish they'd learned earlier? And I'm sure we'll hear echoes of some of the foundation that you've put down already in this conversation, but I'd love to hear what those are at headline level, and then we can explore them in a bit more detail.
Great. I think one of them, and they're in no particular order, one of them is that I really wish I learned how to hype myself up more and recognize my successes and contributions more, both internally and externally, like in private and in public. I also think that I used to be very much the first to come, last to leave, like very focused on work. This is who I am. And I think that that is, maybe there are contexts where that is necessary, but I don't necessarily think that's the healthiest way to view and approach your work. And I also would say that going back to being fiercely you, I think that I really believe that obedience is an overvalued trait. And I spent a lot of time doing exactly what I thought other people wanted me to do, or things that would please other people, or trying to be a success in other people's eyes. And I think that that is not the recipe for a leader. So those are my high level lessons.
Great. Love it. Let me just play those back, see if I've got the main thread of them.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's something, first of all, about learning to hype yourself up a little bit more, both internally and externally, celebrating the successes you've had and making sure that those are properly acknowledged, and the strengths that you've got. The second one is this kind of turning up first in, leaving the last person out of the office, I guess locking the door on the way out, is an unhealthy, there's some merits to it, but it's an unhealthy measure of success for your work.
Sure. Or for your life, rather.
Or for your life. Okay, great.
Right.
And then lastly, obedience being an overvalued trait, and measuring the success on what others think you should or shouldn't do.
Yeah.
There's some caution to that, I think you're saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely
great.
Fair.
I can hear from those lessons you've learned, perhaps an inspiration for you creating your organization to help others to get a little bit more orientated, a bit more focus around what's really important for them of their values.
Absolutely. That's huge.
Could you help me understand? I mean, it may not be linked to all 3 of these points, but at what point did you realize this was your mission to help others with theirs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually think it's always been there. I distinctly remember, I've always loved inspirational sports movies as a genre, and I distinctly remember telling my mother that I really resonated with the coach, and that I really loved the idea of being someone who helped other people reach their goals and reach their fullest potential. And so it's always kind of been part of my identity that I really love to be a mentor, a guide, someone who is helping other people rise. And I then, I worked for a while in different industries, but the work kind of started when I was in college, when I was an RA at Duke University as an undergrad. And I really just loved working with young adults and helping them figure out who they are, what they valued, what they wanted out of their college experience, all of those, what they wanted their life to look like. And I just really caught a bug and loved those conversations and loved being that person. And so then I pursued a career in higher education and worked as an academic advisor in NYU and Northeastern in Boston. And again, loved having these conversations with young people.
Yeah.
And I then, during the pandemic, I actually had students and past students and people from various walks of life asking to talk to me, because I think there is a need for someone who is not parents, friends, or a therapist to listen to these young adults and help them figure out, how to navigate and find their path. And so I opened up Bat Outta Hell in the pandemic.
Great. Well, that's incredible. And which is your favorite sports movie?
That's like picking a favorite child. At right now, there's a film called The Replacements, which many British people actually don't know. It's a Keanu Reeves movie, and it's a football movie. That's one of my favorites of all time. I also deeply, deeply love the film Strictly Ballroom, which I believe is a sports movie.
Okay.
The movie Miracle, which is a hockey movie. That's always fantastic. I could go down a whole list. The Karate Kid is an amazing film. The original, it's kind of like, I love these, and I watch them whenever I need.
And the coach that you most resonate with, who do you have the greatest affinity with?
Ooh, they all have merits. I think. Look, if I could be anywhere close to a Mr. Miyagi, that would be high praise. That would be high praise. There are lessons that I've learned from the Karate Kid and from Strictly Ballroom and the movies that I've listed that I stay with me. There's actually a scene from Rocky 3 that I used to watch before big moments in my life that would get me feeling ready. So it's actually like the scene where Rocky and Adrian are yelling on a beach about what is fear and why do we have fear and how to overcome fear, and to not be afraid of living your life and going after what you wanted. And I used to watch that before big moments. So yeah, great. I'm pretty embedded in this world.
Yeah, I love it, and it is a genre I really enjoy. Actually, I'm certainly not as quite wide into it as you are, but I do like it. It's always inspiring. Some great scenes. Okay, going back to your first point in terms of hyping self up more, how do you help a client to do that, to get that right level? Because I think with most things in life, there's a spectrum. There's a kind of a pendulum that swings that could go too far when someone's a bit deluded, through to the other end where someone is depressed, maybe. I don't know if that's the end of the other end of the spectrum, but kind of low self-worth, let's put it that way. So how do you help somebody to get that sweet spot, if there is such a thing?
I think it's important to note that everybody is different. So how I would approach this conversation, or how I would approach the answer to that, is different for everybody. And I also think that context is different. So sometimes you want to be a bit deluded, if you are, and sometimes you want to be thinking you're like the best person for this job, truly, and that's how you want to walk into the room. So it depends on the context and the person. But I do think that one could make a generalization that human beings are not the greatest at recognizing their successes and recognizing what they're capable of. And I think that it's important to, even, from small to big, it's important to call those out, so that when you go up against something that's new or outside of your comfort zone, you are aware of what you've accomplished and what kind of stuff you've done before and successfully overcome. So, because I think precedent is huge, and recognizing, I've done something like this before. I've done something really outside of my comfort zone before. I can, even though this is different, even though this might be bigger, I can still overcome it or get through it or thrive. And I have the skills and tools to do so, and I can trust myself to do so. And I also think it's really important to talk about the word courage here, because we have this idea that courage is running into a burning building or doing something huge, whereas we don't recognize the acts of courage that we do on a regular basis, and every day. So in conversations with clients, I tend to highlight, or if someone runs over something that they've done and not really given it credit, we pause and we recognize, do you understand what it took to do that? Do you understand that everybody is not doing that? Do you recognize how challenging that was for you? Or why do you think that that wasn't that big of a deal? We dig into it and question it and
Yes.
ask ourselves, why do we think that's not that important or not that relevant? And maybe that has to do with what other people in our lives have taught us success means. Maybe that means that we think everybody in the world is doing it, and we're not that special. It's not that big of a deal. We don't like to brag about ourselves, whatever it might be, but we want to dig into why we don't like to brag about ourselves, or what our definition of success is, or we want to really dig in so that we can start to be someone who recognizes that we're capable, because you're the captain of your ship. And if until you recognize that you can drive that and that you can make the decisions, and until you can trust that you can do that and be okay, you're going to be constantly looking for the approval of other people and like living someone else's life, which is not what we want.
Yeah, I get that. And maybe following that same analogy, being the captain of the ship, I guess what's going on for me is, how does someone know that they need somebody like you? They might be in the boiler room of the ship and not realize, they're stoking the engines. They're really busy. They're busy and active, but not really realizing that they're not going in the direction that they really want to be going. They're kind of in the dark somewhere. How do they come to a realization that someone like you might be able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, it's very different for everybody, but I think there are some people that feel maybe lost. They're like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what the right move for me is. I don't know what direction I'm trying to go in, and I need a little bit of guidance or help. That's one way. Another way is, I can see where I'm going and I don't like it. I can see where I'm headed. I can see that if I keep going in this direction, keep doing these patterns, this is not what I want to be doing, but I don't know how to shift. So that's another type of thing. And then there are some people who I exactly know where I want to go. I just don't know how to get there. Like, I really do know where I want to be and where I want to go for right now. Obviously life changes, but I don't know how to get there, and I do need just a little bit of help and guidance in that way. It can come from different areas, or it's just like, I'm just really unhappy where I am and I don't know why. That can be a reason. So it's just a little bit of any one of those or a combination of those, and then you might reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the other part that's going on for me is this getting bigger? Is it a crisis point in terms of this orientation for this age group? Like, is there something happening that would suggest there's a greater need for support, which other generations may not have had even 10, 20, 30 years ago? They wouldn't even thought about consulting with someone like a coach. It's just like, crack on. Yeah. What's changed, would you say?
So there are a couple things. I think definitely society's view on asking for help has changed over generations. So even though it might have been crack on and like, let's just make do and do it, that might not have been what would be the most beneficial, but it was the way it was. I do think also that every generation, especially young people of every generation, have struggle about figuring out who they are, what they want, what they value. That's always the case. That's a human condition. But I do think that young people today are dealing with circumstances that have made this human condition, this experience, more challenging. And whether that's the COVID pandemic, social media, helicopter parenting, the state of geopolitics, the crumbling systems of whether it's housing, corporate structure, healthcare, education, all these things, like, young people today are having to deal with and contend with a world that is constantly shifting under their feet, and in which they're constantly seeing other people who are supposedly doing better than they are, or like millionaires by the time that they're 20. And it's and there's this comparison that is like through the roof. And there is this feeling of being behind, which is compounded, and like not knowing how to engage in a workplace setting or higher education setting, which is compounded by the COVID pandemic. And then a lot of people of this generation have had parents who have tried to help them by doing things for them, or help them by removing obstacles, which is not helpful. And then also I feel like we're always living in a time where there's so much noise and voices of telling you who you should be and how you should live, and like where it's parents or teachers or social media or like people in various spaces. But it's much louder now than it's ever been before due to social media. And so I think young people today are contending with uncertainty. Like a career isn't even a thing anymore. So what does that mean that I do? Right? So like it's questions like that I think, let alone like, what do I want to even do for a job? So it's just like trying to navigate changing structures and changing world within the within trying to figure out who you are within the world of AI. I mean, there's all this stuff, right? Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, a thread through that resonated with me is this the technology, the influence technology has had, and you've mentioned social media a couple of times. What counsel do you give, or what how do you people with that? Is it kind of detox in some way, or like what do you do when that social media has so much influence over your own view of self?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I absolutely do believe a detox or break or time without social media is really important or necessary. So I do discuss that with clients. Clients are, and young people in general, are varying levels of accepting of that. So there are some clients and young people who are just fed up with it and they are like, I'd rather not be on it at all. And there are other people who really enjoy it or love it or addicted to it. And so that they're less likely to go off of it or for a long period of times or delete it from their phone or whatever it might be. And in that case, or in all cases really, we want to have more of a conscious view of it. So we want to understand that social media isn't a neutral platform, but it's optimized for engagement. And we really want to consciously understand that. You want to understand that you're looking at someone's curated projected reality and someone who's like tried to take a picture 30 times and this is the one that they posted versus this is just their life. We want to ask ourselves why we're using it and be conscious of our intentions. Or do we want connection or validation or inspiration, or are we just stressed and we're doom scrolling? Or how long have we been using it? Like, are we just mindlessly scrolling? How does, like, do we understand how that influences us? We want to be skeptical. So we don't want to just take everything as true. I do think that it is important to set limits. I do also think it's important to recognize that social media does seem to be, well, in some ways, veering towards valuing authenticity. So I think that there is some way in which social media is, you know, there are people who are posting their struggles about how to get, like, struggles getting a job and posting valuable tips or forming community. There are people who are showing before and after Photoshop pictures or body positivity or self-love messages. So that's always lovely. So I think there are positives to it. And I do also think it's important to remember that there's a loneliness epidemic happening. And so social media should not be the sole source of connection or friendship. And endorphins are created by human to human connection. So we want to make sure that we're integrating that into our life as well. And it's just that whole conversation. That's what I try to make sure my clients and young people understand.
Great. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to take on board there.
Unpack.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind delving into the obedience point you mentioned earlier. Would you happily go there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. So let's dig to another level on that. So you talked about it being an overvalued trait. What is what? Give me the next paragraph, I guess, around the implications of obedience in your mind.
I believe that the only way to live your fullest, fiercest, most authentic life according to you is by cultivating a relationship and developing a relationship with your inner child. And I believe it is the messages, subconscious or unconscious and conscious, that we receive as children that create obedience. Obedience can be, I mean it, and it can exhibit in many different ways, but or manifest in many different ways. But as children, we want approval and acceptance, and we need love, safety, and security. So we adapt and amend our personalities to get approval and acceptance, and we just don't engage with the parts of our personality that we think we would receive embarrassment, rejection, or shame. But that's not demonstrative of our whole personality. And so I think what's really important is that as we try to only do things that we think would be valued by others or successfully understood by others or good enough for others or whatever it might be, we are muting and dulling our true selves, and thus maybe muting and dulling our passion, our quirkiness, our zest for life, all of these things, so that we can only be good. And I think that in doing so and in creating this culture of obedience, whether that means making yourself smaller or saying yes to everything, people pleasing, or whether that means becoming a doctor because your parents said that that was what was successful, whatever it might mean, you are doing a disservice to yourself. So what we want to do is we want to unpack and we want to uncover our whole selves and figure out who we really are, what we really value, what we really want outside of what everybody else thinks. Try to figure out what's blocking us from, and what's the fear is, or the anxiety and insecurity that's blocking us from doing the things that we think wouldn't be good enough for other people. And then if that is something we want to engage in, and then going after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, fascinating point. I guess part of my processing of this is as a parent, as well as an individual, the influence I have over my children and my grandchildren now as well, appropriately. So what I'm hearing, to see if I'm getting this right, is not necessarily promoting civil disobedience or kind of outwardly disobediently, just disobedient for the sake of it. It's actually challenging the rules, challenging the wiring of why you are obeying, and when you're doing it just by default or with intent. Have I heard that right, or is it no, disobey because that's where you're going to find your real self? Depending on what the context is,
disobeying, civil disobedience might be what's called for. So, that's up to you, and also perhaps really the right thing to do. But what I would say is, questioning why your intent, questioning why you're doing what you're doing, and not obeying for the sake of safety or security or feeling accepted. Because I think that something that my mom used to say to me as a really young girl was, don't ever think the rules come from outside of you. And what I understood that to mean is, like, you are the one, you create your own life. You are the one who has to live with the consequences of your actions. You are the one who has to engage in your life. So these rules that we have created, whether it's society or your parents or what have you, like, obeying these rules is not necessarily going to get you what you want. Also, if you look at all these people who are perhaps living the lives that you want to be, or life that you want to be living, they're probably rule breakers, right? In whether it's literally or, I mean, literally, they're rule breakers in various shapes or forms. So, yeah.
Yeah. I want to overlay this to another part that we were talking about, perhaps in terms of sports, and using this same analogy. I guess there's certain rules to a game.
Sure.
And then there's some rule breaking, or like being unorthodox. I take Michael Johnson as a track athlete, who I think is just an incredible like athlete and human, frankly, like running 400 meters and 200 meters, breaking world records, Olympic gold medals, these type of things. He had a very unorthodox style, so he ran his own way, but he was still running on a track 400 meters in a lane, but in his own way. He was obedient to the rules of the game he was playing, if you like, the event he was participating in, but he was non-conformist in terms of the style. He had his own way of running, which was very upright. Again, I'm no track coach, but just the way as an observer, a spectator, very unorthodox, which actually was very effective for him. And clearly, he broke a mold that other people were being trained to run in a certain way, and he was doing it differently. So there's this level of obedience that he accepted. I'm running 400 meters in an oval. I'm not just going to run 400 meters straight, and you've just got to time me because I'm going to disobey. He's got to run it within a certain conformity to some rules.
Right.
And I guess society, the part of my fear, I guess, in this space is realizing that actually there is some we are social people and social cues, and wildly people pleasing not helpful. But perhaps again, the other end of the spectrum is being a complete kind of antisocial, not being aware that there are some cues and some norms that are around you. Also, is probably unhealthy in some context. Again, the context you've said is everything depending on what success looks like. But it's like there's some element of that, of reading, emotional intelligence, of reading the room, reading the cues, and determining what's appropriate for the setting. Coming in dressed as a clown and in a clown outfit and saying, "Hey, I'm going to invest your millions of pounds," might not be the best. It's unconforming, or whatever the term is, but it's probably not generating high levels of credibility in terms of you being somebody trustworthy to put their millions of dollars into a certain investment. So there's some of that type of thing that's going on for me as I'm processing this.
I'm definitely not advocating breaking definitely not advocating breaking the societal rules or norms that keep us all safe, that are there for safety or security, or there for a reason in such a way. I do, and I agree with you, context is incredibly important. It's kind of a similar way of how I feel like people telling you to follow your passion. That's great, but like you still need to be able to financially afford your life. So it's like you need to have this or whether that's context, or whether that's just a little bit of a boundary, or whether that's just an understanding of reality. So I think that that's definitely true. What I do think is that the rules, we are clearly being shown time and time again that the rules of society are not working in various ways. And that the people who are getting to the top of their field are not following rules, whether you agree with it or not. So I think that obviously some of these are endangering the safety of other people. I just think that it's important to live true to who you are. And if who you are and what you value is not the mainstream value, like if you perhaps don't value climbing the corporate ladder, or if you perhaps don't value having kids and you're like, everybody thinks that women should have kids, or everybody wants to climb the corporate ladder and make as much money as possible, or everyone wants to get married, or everyone wants to study business, or whatever, like it depends what it is, then we want to make sure that you're not living your lives based on the values that, or the rules that society has kind of created. And within that, exactly what you're saying in your example, like maybe the way to succeed is by doing it in a little bit of a maverick way. Like, I also think that we have this view that, in this fear that if we go outside of the box or if we do something different, then we will be met with ridicule and shame and embarrassment. And obviously there are some trolls or people who don't necessarily see the vision or are projecting something from themselves onto you, but most of the time you're actually viewed with, oh, that was so cool that you did that like that you did that, or pride, or people thinking you're a badass, or people like really thinking, oh, I could never do that, like. And so I think that you realize, like, actually we have this held fear that if we behave according to society, everything will be okay, and if we go out, deviate from the norm, we'll be like isolated and sent out. But it's actually like people who do something a little bit different and new and unique are lauded. And
Yes.
I actually like can't stop thinking, there's this in the movie Strictly Ballroom, there is this like dance competition where everybody does the same steps and the same dances, and this one man wants to dance his own steps, and everybody thinks he's a fool and everybody doesn't understand and thinks he's going to lose. And he finds one partner that also wants to dance her own steps, and they do. And like everyone gets involved, everyone supports them, everyone, they get uplifted because he just decides to live his truth. I want to dance my own steps. That's how I live my life. Like, and that's how I would ask other people to live their lives. Like, dance your own steps, like, but really, because that's how you're going to find what you enjoy doing, what you want to be doing. Like, you're not going to be happy or let alone successful doing something that you don't even believe in or want to be doing, even though society tells you should.
Yeah. Wow. Great. Well, how do people get in touch with you, Hillary, if they want to find out a little bit more, the kind of support you can provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is batoutahell.net. It's BATOUTTAHELL.net. My Instagram and TikTok are bat.outta_hell. And you can, I have a 3-month long program. I have people who meet with me regularly outside of that program. And you also can set up a consultation call with me to just talk about the work, or meet me, or see if we vibe and if this work makes sense to you. And then we can go from there.
Great. And what would the 3-month, if I came on the 3-month program, what am I going to get as likely outcomes from that 3-month phase?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Aligned and Alive. And it's the first month is figuring out who you really are, what you really want, and what you really value, and what you really want your life to look like. And there is worksheets, and there are like work that we do in that process.
Yeah.
And then the second month is more about figuring out and overcoming your blocks and what's stopping you from creating that life you want to create. And then the third month is, through the work that we did in the first and second month, maybe some things have shifted. So it's reevaluating the answers that you found in the first month, and then creating an actionable strategic plan so that you can really move forward in the way that you want to and feel confident and comfortable doing so. I think also, like, we also have follow-ups, so we don't just kind of like, or I don't just go fly and then you are totally on your own. So we definitely keep in contact and have follow-up sessions. I think it depends on whether you feel like you're really ready to commit to doing the work, or you are really kind of confident that you know what you want to discuss. But either way, if you're feeling like maybe a little bit unsure, that 3 months is one way to do it. I also have clients who work with me outside of that.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Great. Well, I wish you the best of success in the work that you're doing. I think it's really important. I heard someone describe recently how there's disorientation and distraction as two kind of challenges in life. And, I think you're helping with both of those, kind of helping people to orientate around whatever their mission, North Star, that purpose they're trying to define, but also I hope, then minimize the distractions. We talked a little bit about technology, but it's not only that, I know, to help them to follow through on that mission. So yeah, I wish you the best of success.
Thank you so much
in that journey.
I appreciate
Thank
that.
you, Hillary. Yeah.
Wonderful.
What have you taken away from this conversation today?
Leadership means different things to different people. And I think it's really important to recognize that, again, it comes back to who you are and what you want and what you want leadership to look like in your life, and what your life is capable of holding leadership to be.
Yeah. Great. You've also helped me to remember context is an important thing for us to be aware of in so many aspects of our life, in terms of where we double down on certain things, where we might ease up, and just reading that situation and just hearing that word a lot today, determining how we hype ourselves up and how do we have a successful life. Yeah,
absolutely. Context is everything. And because the work is how your fears, insecurities, and anxieties manifest in your adult life. And so just because I say something that, like, I do group coaching and I also do workshops, but I also make within those spaces, make sure to recognize that just because I might say something one way, or I'm talking about something in particular, that doesn't mean that it resonates or works in another context or for another person. So it's really important to give time to work individually, even within a collective.
Yeah, understood. Great. Thanks, Hillary. Lovely to meet you, and lovely to speak with you about these lessons and the work you're doing. So wish you great success.
Thank you so much. You as well.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us at the After Dinner Leadership Table, and trust that you've got good value from listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. One question for you. The question is, so what? What will you do with what you've just heard? And here's a few suggestions. Number 1, lead with more purpose. 2, mentor with patience. 3, share with pride. You think of anyone who you know that would benefit from listening to what you've just heard, that would help them to be a better leader today or in the future. Please share, like, subscribe. It helps other people to consume the content. And we wish you all the very best of success, and please listen again to another After Dinner Leadership conversation.